If you've ever felt like running away was the only way out, wait until you hear what happened to Emily. Emily's hands trembled as she held the one-way ticket like it was her last hope. Her eyes were swollen from crying all night. Her heart raced in her chest like it was trying to escape her body. She had no destination in her soul, only the desperate need to breathe. To break free. To find herself again. For 12 long years, she had lived in a marriage that drained the color from her world. Her husband hadn't hit her, not physically, but his words cut sharper than any blade. The emotional abuse was constant. He isolated her from her friends. He made her feel small. Stupid. Unworthy of love. Over time, Emily stopped recognizing herself in the mirror. But on that morning, at 6:12 a.m., while her husband snored in a whiskey-induced sleep, Emily did something brave. She quietly packed a small suitcase, wrote a 6-word note, "I can't do this anymore," and walked out the door. The ticket she'd bought was for Portland, a city she picked at random. She didn't know anyone there. She just needed to be far away from the yelling, the gaslighting, the fear. Far from the woman she had been forced to become. But fate, as always, had plans of its own. In her panic and exhaustion, Emily rushed through security and made it just in time for what she thought was her gate. At gate 17, a final boarding call was echoing through the speakers. She ran, showed her ticket, and hurried into the jet bridge. It wasn't until the plane was airborne that she realized her mistake. "Excuse me," she said softly to the flight attendant. "This is going to Portland, right?" The woman blinked. "No, ma'am. This flight is going to Minneapolis." Emily froze. Minneapolis? She felt her stomach twist into a knot. She looked around, desperate, then leaned back into her seat and covered her face with her hands. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself. "Hey," came a soft voice beside her. "Are you all right?" She looked up and saw a man in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Blue eyes, a kind face, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket. His concern wasn't forceful. It wasn't pity. It was calm. "I got on the wrong plane," she mumbled, voice cracking. "Well then," he smiled gently, "maybe you were meant to." Emily blinked at him. "What?" He chuckled. "I just mean, sometimes the wrong flight gets you exactly where you need to be." His name was Daniel, and over the course of the 2-hour flight, Emily found herself telling him things she hadn't told another soul in years. Maybe it was the anonymity. Maybe it was the quiet comfort of his presence. Or maybe it was because he simply listened. She told him about the emotional scars, the years of walking on eggshells, of becoming a ghost of herself. Of how she finally gathered the courage to leave without knowing what came next. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't offer advice. He just sat with her in that raw space, holding her pain with a quiet strength. When she paused, he shared his own story, how he'd lost his wife 3 years ago in a tragic car accident. How grief had nearly drowned him. How he had slowly rebuilt his life. Alone. And how sometimes, starting over meant letting go of everything, even the plan you thought you had. By the time the plane landed, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years, lightness. A sliver of peace. "Look," Daniel said as they walked toward baggage claim, "I know we just met, and this might sound weird, but if you need a safe place to breathe for a bit, my sister lives nearby. She's a therapist. You'd like her. No pressure, I promise. Just, if you want someone neutral to talk to." Emily hesitated. Her instincts screamed to trust no one, years of control had taught her that. But something deep in her, a voice she hadn't heard in a long time, whispered, "Say yes." So she did. The days that followed were unlike anything Emily had known before. She stayed in the guest room at Daniel's sister's house, a cozy little home filled with books, warmth, and quiet safety. For the first time in years, Emily could sleep. She could sit at the kitchen table without flinching. She could speak without fear of being torn down. Daniel's sister, Lisa, asked her the kind of questions that made Emily cry, and then heal. "What do you want, Emily? Who are you when no one is telling you what to be?" And Daniel, he showed up. With coffee. With walks in the park. With long talks about music, books, loss, and healing. He never made her feel rushed. He never expected anything. He just stayed. Emily started writing again. She journaled daily. And in those pages, she wrote a letter to her ex-husband, a letter she'd never send. In it, she said everything she had swallowed for 12 years. In it, she let go. She forgave him, not for his sake, but for her own freedom. She stayed in Minneapolis for 2 months. One evening, as snow turned to early spring drizzle, Daniel took her to a small bookstore cafe tucked on a quiet corner. A handwritten sign read, "For sale." Daniel looked at her. "I've been dreaming of buying a place like this. Books, coffee, community. And I was wondering if maybe we dreamed it together." Emily stared at him, stunned. "You mean, us?" "I mean life," he said softly. "Real life. No masks. Just you, and me, building something beautiful, slowly. Only if you want to." And for the first time, she didn't second-guess herself. She smiled through her tears and said, "Let's start over." 10 years later, Emily stood before a crowd, holding her memoir, Wrong Flight, Right Life. "My story is not just about leaving," she read. "It's about choosing. Choosing freedom over fear. Choosing to believe that even when everything seems broken, there's still something beautiful ahead." She glanced into the audience, where Daniel sat holding their daughter, and her voice trembled with gratitude. And sometimes, she smiled, you board the wrong plane and find the one person who helps you become the version of yourself you were always meant to be. So if you're holding that ticket in your hand, scared, uncertain, remember this, the wrong flight might just take you to the right life.